Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending the webinar presentation today. Please wait until 5 p.m. until the further attendees have signed in. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the webinar presentation. Please hold on as we wait for further attendees to sign in. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the webinar presentation on February 2012. The topic for today is Hong Kong, a business platform into China. I'd like to give you a brief introduction to Clayco Group. We are an international management consulting firm that was established in 1979. We provide a variety of services ranging from market entry consulting to incorporations, tax, audit, accounting, and trade services, as well as human resource services. We have a team of over 120 consultants, accountants, and legal professionals within our 10 offices, which are in China, Hong Kong, and Singapore. And we speak a variety of languages which caters to all of our clients, ranging from German, Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, and Japanese. In today's webinar, I wanted to emphasize on the advantages that Hong Kong has when establishing an entity in China. I firstly wanted to go through the statistics and economic results that Hong Kong has. Unfortunately, I don't have the statistics for 2011, but I did want to provide you with economic performance for 2010 and to show you what Hong Kong is doing in order to attract investments with China. The biggest development occurring right now is the cruise terminal, which is being developed on the old Kai Tak airport. And this is supposed to be attracting new investments as well as new tourists for the tourist industry to enter into Hong Kong. Setting up a business in Hong Kong is relatively easy. The paid-in capital is 1 Hong Kong dollar, and the authorized capital is only 10,000 Hong Kong dollars. This is quite a difference compared to setting up an entity in China, whereby the minimum requirement is 100,000 RMB for consulting companies and 1 million RMB for trading entities. The requirement is that there only has to be one shareholder and one director. Both can be people or entities located inside or outside of Hong Kong. In addition, a company secretary is required. This must be an individual or an entity which is based in Hong Kong. The role and responsibilities of a company secretary are that they are managing what is called a company kit, which contains all documents associated with the establishment of the Hong Kong company. It's all statutory records, and these must be kept by the company secretary and renewed on an annual basis. In addition, a registered office is required. The company kit must be located in the registered office address by law. What is interesting in Hong Kong is that when you establish a Hong Kong entity, the business scope associated with the entity can be rather vague. The reason why I am mentioning this is because when you establish an entity in China, actually the business scope has to be very specific. You cannot be vague. Now, to give you an example of what the business scope could be for a Hong Kong entity, to give you a few examples, one could be just holding entity, another could be just import-export, another could be trade, another could also be services. Of course, you can specify what you would actually like to put inside your business scope, but the more vague, the more services you can actually provide. A bank account is not required in Hong Kong, but obviously to do your business, it is an advantage to have one. You can open Hong Kong bank accounts with any bank in Hong Kong, and generally they do wish to see you face-to-face. We generally recommend our clients to travel to Hong Kong in order to meet with the banks face-to-face and discuss the opening procedures, as well as any other issues that need to be discussed, such as credit lines, etc. A Hong Kong company must do an annual audit and must produce financial statements and management reports. This is a requirement. The first audit only has to take place within 18 months of the incorporation date of the company, and after this, on an annual basis. A Hong Kong company has a business registration certificate, which is equivalent to your business license, and this must be renewed on an annual basis. The government has a registration fee, which at this moment in time is $320 US, and is payable to the government. This varies, the fee actually varies on an annual basis and is changed according to the government's regulations. The taxation system in Hong Kong is one of the most simplest and easiest taxation systems to follow. There are only 3 taxes that companies and individuals are liable for. One is profits tax of a company, which is based at a rate of 16.5%. Then there is salaries tax, which is the same as individual income tax, and this is based on a rate of 15%. The last tax is property tax, which incurs when you purchase a property in Hong Kong, and this is taxed at a rate of 15%. What is interesting about Hong Kong is that for many years it was considered by many countries around the world as a tax haven, which in this case it can be considered as one, in that you can declare offshore income and apply for a tax exemption status with the Inland Revenue Department and obtain a 0% profits tax. This is actually the biggest advantage that many Hong Kong companies have. What does offshore mean? Offshore basically means that you're not doing any type of business in Hong Kong itself. So there are certain criteria which need to be followed. One, for example, is that the directors should not be based in Hong Kong. In addition, you should not be invoicing other Hong Kong entities. If you are in the trading business, the flow of your goods should not be remitted or should not be sent to Hong Kong. In addition, you should have no employees that are based in Hong Kong. If you follow these type of criteria, then you do have a very good chance to apply for the tax exemption and have it granted. Of course, this is an application procedure and must be approved by the Inland Revenue Department. It is not an easy application, as the Inland Revenue Department tries to find or tries to make sure that there really has been not one single onshore transaction. They will look through all transactions that have occurred within the entity. That being said, as long as you have a provider or you have a finance department that caters to all the transactions and bank transactions as well as trade transactions that have gone through the entity, then you should be fine. Other advantages of Hong Kong is the fact that you do not have a capital gains tax, there is no dividends tax, and there's no tax on interest earned. One of the most recent advantages that Hong Kong has is that it's been signing double taxation agreements with many countries around the world. The reason why it has signed this is the fact that with the OECD, it has changed one of its articles, being that it can exchange information. What this basically means is that any overseas tax bureau has the right to contact Hong Kong in reference to certain companies or accounting regulations that are occurring. Now, one of the biggest advantages of having these double taxation agreements is, of course, the special tax rates that are applicable. And this especially occurs when you're doing trading business and you're keeping profit in Hong Kong, that you're not double taxed in your parent country. There are many agreements which are in force currently. There are also agreements which are being ratified. At this moment in time, there are 24 agreements which are in force. Now, I wanted to go through the next slides in regards to actual case studies and to provide you with concrete examples in regards to how a trading company in Hong Kong can assist you with doing your business in China. Case study 1 reflects a trading company which buys in China. What your previous or what your current structure is that your existing company is buying directly from your suppliers in China and Asia. How can a Hong Kong company help you? Well, basically, you can start selling FOB, which means that your customers can now contact your own Hong Kong company to purchase from suppliers. In addition, your own entity can also contact your Hong Kong company to purchase. The advantage is that a margin can be kept in Hong Kong tax-free, being that the whole transaction would be offshore. Of course, if the transaction or any part of the transaction occurs in Hong Kong, then the tax rate applied would be 16.5%. One of the new advantages that Hong Kong can offer is the fact that it is the first country which has the internationalization of the RMB, meaning that when you open a bank account in Hong Kong, you automatically have a renminbi account. This means you can also start negotiating prices with your suppliers in China in RMB and have your Hong Kong company settle these invoices in RMB. Of course, your suppliers in China have to follow certain regulations in order to be able to receive RMB from overseas, and they require this to be done with their own banks in China. Case study 2 reflects how a Hong Kong trading company can assist in selling into China or Asia. The advantage is that, of course, you do not have to set up your own entity in China to handle China sales, which is an incredible investment compared to a Hong Kong company. In addition, a Hong Kong company can receive RMB from its customers in China now, as well as from other countries in Asia. And again, as the whole transaction is offshore, it can apply for tax exemption. Here are a few benefits to how a trading company in Hong Kong can be utilized. Of course, the biggest advantage is that it offers greater flexibility. You can have a choice for your international trade program and choose whether you want to sell X warehouse from your head office or sell FOB Asian port from your Hong Kong company. Naturally, when you're doing business in China and you're doing business in Asia, a Hong Kong company does offer a certain level of prestige, particularly if you're trying to make a comparison with the British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, or Seychelles. Obviously, when doing business in China as well as the rest of the world, having an office and a company in Hong Kong is image-wise a lot better. Here are a few more advantages that Hong Kong does have to offer, and I hope that you can see them through the case studies that we will be discussing. Now I'm going to be going into the case studies whereby you can see how a Hong Kong holding company or Hong Kong trading company can assist with your China business. In this case study 3, it is a very simple diagram explaining how a Hong Kong holding company can hold a representative office in China. The biggest reason that actually companies set up holding companies in Hong Kong is the fact that it takes away full liability from the parent company. This is an important point to consider because if your business in Asia does go sour, the first point of contact would be the Hong Kong company rather than your parent company. It basically puts your parent company into a safety net. Many of our clients, to give you an example, see China still as a risk. And as a consequence, having a holding company, whether it be in Hong Kong or other destinations, is just a safety barrier which takes away the liability. Case study 4 is concerning a Hong Kong trading company and a representative office in China. This is for buying in China. What happens here is that your trade transaction still continues to flow through your Hong Kong trading company. What happens in China is that it is purely a representative office, which means that it's a liaison office. You hire your employees who are handling the quality control as well as the merchandising through this office. What are the advantages? Well, the first advantage, of course, is that in Hong Kong it's a virtual office. You do not need to pay for the high rental amounts or even the high salary amounts. Rent and salary is much lower in China compared to Hong Kong. In addition, you have staff on the ground in China who can oversee and make sure that all sourcing transactions are occurring properly, all suppliers are up to standard, and all quality control is being taken care of prior to shipment. This next slide is in reference to sales in China. Basically, the concept is the same. The trading company in Hong Kong would be handling all of the sales that would occur in China or Asia. In China, there would be a representative office which handles all marketing and all sales. This could include people who are developing marketing material, developing the Chinese website, developing price listing, and meeting with clients face-to-face. One point I would like to make here is that although I have included representative offices into this presentation, representative offices at some point in China will become obsolete. The reason why I say this is because the Chinese government has placed very high restrictions and procedures in order to set up and maintain a representative office. In addition, there are better structures, both for maintenance as well as tax efficiency, in the form of limited companies rather than using representative offices. But if you have questions on this, it would be better to discuss with one of our consultants, and you can also contact me after the presentation. Case study 6 is in reference to using a Hong Kong holding company to hold a limited company in China. Now, there are a variety of business models which can actually be drawn up using this concept. Basically, if you're not planning on using Hong Kong as an actual operational entity, it firstly can just be used as a holding company for the China entity. This is, again, purely for liability issues. If you have a variety of different business divisions, then you can also use Hong Kong for certain trade transactions or even service transactions, and you can use your limited company in China for others. One example would be to use Hong Kong for buying or also selling in other Asian countries in the region, and to use your China entity purely for your China sales or your China sourcing. Naturally, if you're doing a manufacturing, then again, a Hong Kong holding would be advantageous. Now, one of the biggest advantages of having this Hong Kong holding company, and you are actually doing operational business in China, is the fact that the double taxation agreement between China and Hong Kong is one of the most preferential compared to any other country that China has signed agreements with. The biggest advantage is if you're making profits in China, then the dividends tax is only 5% if it's going to a Hong Kong company. Again, the advantage in Hong Kong is that once dividends arrive, there are no further tax implications. This should be considered when in the long term, when you're planning on actually making an investment into China. One question that many clients ask is it possible to change the structure after a few years once the limited company has been set up in China? Which means, can I first set up in the first stage my parent company directly into China, and within 2 to 3 years, can I then change the structure that a Hong Kong company buys this entity? Usually my answer is this. Right from the start, it is better to have the appropriate structure. The reason why I say this is because the Chinese government knows what the advantages Hong Kong has to offer. So of course, if you're planning to change the structure and have a Hong Kong company eventually holding your China company, then it does show the reasoning, or it does show slightly what you have in mind behind it. One of the things I highly recommend is don't do this change in structure right before you want to declare profit and remit dividends overseas, because it will clearly show why you're actually doing it. Case study 7 is in reference to joint ventures. In history, many of the joint ventures that were established in China were by two foreign parties, usually the Chinese party and then a foreign party based in the US, based in Germany, based in other Asian countries. What we have found over time is that obviously if the joint venture doesn't work very well, then it's very difficult to exit it, particularly when the joint venture is in China. As a consequence, we actually recommend that the joint venture be held in Hong Kong, and then this joint venture in Hong Kong sets up a limited company in China. There are advantages for both parties. The advantage for the foreign party is, of course, you can apply for tax exemption. The liability falls in Hong Kong versus in China. If you want to exit the joint venture, it's much easier to do that under British law, which is Hong Kong, versus Chinese law in China. Moreover, the advantages for the Chinese party is the fact that many Chinese companies and many Chinese individuals, many Chinese owners, are actually looking to send their money overseas as well. They're not also willing to pay the high tax rates in China. They usually also want to pay the bare minimum. So for them, being able to transfer their capital overseas could also be an advantage for them. This is something to consider when negotiating with your joint venture partners. In addition, with the dividends tax, it is an advantage for both parties in this regard. And once the joint venture is established in Hong Kong, you would actually be establishing a wholly foreign-owned company in China, which would follow the regulations on wholly foreign-owned enterprises, which obviously is slightly more lenient versus domestic Chinese companies. This is now the end of our presentation. I'm sure many of you have questions in regards to the material that has been passed. I will be sending our presentation to you via email, and you can also then communicate with us if you have any further questions. Our email addresses are listed here. You can contact me at christina.kohler@clayco.com. You can also contact our Hong Kong office or our other offices in China, which are listed also here in the presentation. One thing to note is that we also have a monthly magazine which is being distributed. If you wish to receive it, please do go on our ChinaInvest.biz site and provide your email address. Every month it is related to a new topic associated with China and Hong Kong and certain investment vehicles which can be used. To give you an example, the January issue is associated with sourcing in China and the best options and structures that are available. I thank you for your time. And again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. We look forward to hear from you. Goodbye.